Welcome to Tyrompers No Limit Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thanks so much for tuning in to Tyrompers No Limit Podcast, episode number 76. Guys, we're always fired up. You know we are always fired up. Today we are especially fired up. We got the man, the myth, the legend. We got Anthony on the podcast, a former professional cycler. He has the number one podcast on Spotify around cycling now. This guy is an absolute legend and champion, talking about health, fitness, habits every day over on Twitter. Just an absolute great follow, greater man. Can't wait to share his story with you guys. Welcome to the podcast, Anthony. How you doing today, bro?
Tyler, what an introduction. I feel a lot of pressure to match your energy.
Bro,
I'm not sure I can do it.
Just had a chug of coffee right before I came on, man. You got to get fired up for these things, man. But I am really honored to have you on here, man. I mean, you're a big time guest, a big heavy hitter. I love reading all your tweets and thoughts you put out. You're one of the favorite people I've interacted with. So for anybody who might not know a little about you, can you just start with a little backstory, man? Who you are, what you're about?
Yeah, my journey definitely hasn't been straight. And that's why I love, we all put people in a box and say, you have to have it figured out by this age. You have to have it figured out by this age. I still don't have it figured out. Like I went through my early formative years up to like 18, thinking I was going to be a professional soccer player. At one point, I dropped out of school to be a professional soccer player, then went back to school and got into university and studied economics in undergrad. Another 4 years after that in postgraduate to take a law qualification. You would assume after 7 years of law school that you're going to be a lawyer. I lasted like a week in that. And I was like, nah, this ain't for me either. Kind of described that as like you're climbing a ladder. And after 7 years, you realize the ladder's against the wrong wall. It was like this moment's gone, uh-oh, this ain't good. I don't like this. So I took a career and a contract in France as a professional cyclist and then bounced around France, Canada, America, as a professional cyclist, and again hit a point in that where I was like, the sacrifice is too much. Being a professional athlete, it's, you see a lot of Instagram highlight reels about how amazing it is, but high performance happens in the shadows. You look at amazing athletes, some of the greatest ever, like Michael Phelps, and he wins Olympic gold medals, and then he contemplates suicide. It's a dark, lonely place with a lot of travel and a lot of sacrifice, and I just wasn't really down for it. I was like, it's just the sacrifice, the level of it's too much to stay at this. And I could see the sacrifice I needed to go to the next level, which was like a total just, carnage in my personal life. Like my first relationship, amazing girl, I was with her all the way through high school and college. And like, I totally ruined that relationship, like a 7-year relationship, ruined it with that single track mind. You need to be an athlete. Like you run everything through the lens of, like you asked me to come on this podcast tonight, and it's like, well, it's 7 p.m. here for me. I would have ran that through the lens of, hey, is this going to make me a faster bike racer or not? And if it's no, it's like, no, I'm not doing it. No matter how beneficial the opportunity, it's like, no, I'm not doing it. So you miss out on so many things in life. So I bounced from cycling around to kind of serial entrepreneur for 4 or 5 years. And that's where my current story starts. So I went, a cycling coaching app, which I raised a big round for, at a cafe in Dublin, at an event pre-registration company in Qatar, of all places, social media marketing agency in Dublin, a cycling coaching company in Dublin, all at the same time. And I was like, this was a desperate attempt to avoid going back to law. And I was at that stage where we all start reading, our Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and these type books, and like, oh, I need multiple income streams. This is what it's about. That's going to make me happy. And they're going to be passive. It's going to be sweet. And it wasn't, man. It was stressful. And I started putting on weight for the first time ever in my life. And I don't want to throw around the term depressed. I don't think depressed is a destination. I think it's a continuum from super happy to super unhappy. I was definitely sliding to the wrong side of that continuum for parts of that, where I was like, I was waking up and I wasn't as happy. And I have a good friend, and he sort of said, look, if you've got some savings, can you just, like he used a computer game analogy, can we pull the plug from the wall and start the game again? And let's just start from scratch. So I got rid of all the businesses, and that's kind of where I am now. I came back on this journey of like, well, how do I find health, happiness, and longevity? And the podcast is my search for health, happiness, and longevity. And I share with the audience tools, tips, tricks, and I get to pick the brain of, amazing guests like you on the podcast and say, hey, how have you figured this out? And so every day is a school day on the podcast.
Man, that's amazing, brother. What a journey, man. Okay, there's a lot to dig into there. Number one, I think you're so wise in to say that is the juice worth the squeeze, so to speak. Like, right, you hit the highest levels, it sounds like, of professional athlete in your sport. And, a quote came to my mind right when you said that of Usain Bolt, where he said, nobody sees the 10,000 hours I train alone to be great in the 10-second race. But day in and day out, I got to put in that work, and everything is around that. And it sounds like you kind of hit that wall. So as a pro cycler, did you feel a pressure almost of everybody telling you, man, your life is so great, this is the greatest thing, you're getting paid to travel around the world and ride a bike? That sounds amazing on the outside, right? So where was that kind of moment then, I guess, where you decided, maybe I'm winning at this area, but I want to have a more well-rounded and a balanced life?
Yeah, I can remember the exact moments. And it's funny because a lot of people talk about, they just drifted off course and they weren't sure. I haven't really had that experience in life. I've had really hard turns where I'm like, well, here's a crossroads, a definite crossroads. And I had trained like pretty hardcore for a stage race in the Rocky Mountains. I was living in Toronto at the time with an American team. So I was training for a hilly stage race. And at the last minute, my calendar got changed to a criterium, which is a 1 hour race. So for runners, or to make an analogy, you might be familiar with it, it'd be like training for a marathon. And then they say, actually, you're going in the 1,500 meters. Like, it was a totally different type of training. So I was totally bummed for this. And I remember talking to a buddy of mine who was a pro, like multiple levels up from me, like one of the top guys in the world. And he said to me, hey, there's a word that comes before cycling. That's professional. He's like, once you take a paycheck, you just do what they say. And I was like, that was in my head. And I was really unhappy about that. And I packed up anyway. And I didn't have a car over in Toronto. You don't get paid very well. And so I took local transport from the suburbs in Toronto and Richmond Hill down into the city. And then I took a Greyhound bus from Toronto to Detroit. And I was on this Greyhound bus and I was stuffed between these two really overweight people. And I remembered, even if I get the smell, it's like a smell of stale aftershave. It conjures up that moment for me. And I was sitting there, and one of my friends sent me a text, and it was the first like smartphone I'd had. It was like a new Samsung, and I was like stoked because I could watch videos and stuff on it. And I remember it popping up on the screen, and he just said, "Hey, bro, you're living the dream." And I just looked around, and I was like, "This isn't my dream." So I went down to the front of the bus, and I was like, the bus driver, like, just let me off. And he's like, "I can't let you off. It's not a stop." I was like, "Just stop the bus and let me off. Let me get my shit." And he literally stopped on the side of the road near Detroit somewhere. I took my stuff, just sat on the side of the road with like my bike box, with my bike all packed up inside it, with like my carry-on suitcase. And I just sat there for like a half an hour, didn't know what to do. Called my girlfriend. I'm like, "Hey, I'm done." And she's like, "You're done with the race?" I'm like, "No, I'm done with cycling." I was like, "Come pick me up." And it was like a heavy moment. Met one of my friends in town, went for beers that night with him, my girlfriend. I was like, "Yeah, I'm done." I was like, this just isn't the life for me.
Man, it's such an amazing thing. And I think something that's really good to talk about even more is that people from the outside, like your buddy, like you're living the dream. I remember being a professional poker player for a while, and people would always tell me that, man, oh, you get to, have a boss, this or that. And you only see the highlights, right? But nobody sees those lows where you're on a 3-day losing streak and you've lost, $28,000 and you're contemplating like where your life went wrong. And I'll never forget playing poker with a professional golfer one time. And he wasn't like a super well-known, but he was a guy who was making cuts of majors, and he was on that cusp. And we were all saying the same thing to him. He had just gotten back from Australia, and we're like, dude, what a sick life, man. You get to travel all around the world and play golf. And I'll never forget what he said to me. He said, man, some days I hate golf so much. He goes, I literally just came from an 8-hour session of analyzing my chip with my swing coach. And he's like, I freaking hate golf. And that kind of dawned on me right there, that sometimes when we look at these other people and think, if I just had that, I'd be happy. Or if I just had, like, everybody fights their own battles. Everybody has their own journey and their struggles. And it's kind of on us to figure out that perfect balance, or to figure out what makes us happy, not what other people tell us makes us happy. But it sounds like that was a pretty powerful moment for you. So where do you go from there then? You go back into law, is that right? Or do you try to business?
I didn't really have an idea. I definitely had, I found something I loved. I found cycling, and it was the adrenaline for it. It was the feel good. It was the escapism of it. I loved cycling. I didn't necessarily love racing. Racing was the thing that allowed me to cycle. And so racing was the thing that legitimized me going out on the bike all day, because I could say, hey, it's my job. Without racing and without the paycheck, it's like, people are like, what are you doing out on your bike all day? Do you not have anything else to do? So I knew I wanted to build some sort of life around cycling, but I didn't know how. And that's when I'm really big now on auditing my circle, like who I spend time with. And at the time, I let some bad influences into my life, like not bad people, but bad influences for the direction I wanted to go. It was a lot of guys with unhealthy habits who really chased cash and prioritized money and wanted to build businesses, didn't have like a spiritual set, a health set, and mentality or mindset that I was particularly striving towards. And I spent a lot of time with them, and I ended up basically adopting their lifestyle of, eating out in some fancy restaurants, drinking wine. And I always just felt uncomfortable in that setting. I was like, this just doesn't feel me. I'd be texting like I don't think girlfriend number 2 at this point, texting her under the table. And I'm like, yeah, this just doesn't, like, it doesn't feel me. Like I'm more at home, like, in the mountains or something, walking the dogs or on the bike, or it's just, it didn't feel authentic to me. And I should have listened to that voice, and I never did. But I went further and further down that road into, building a few businesses. Some went well, some didn't go so well. But it was all the time. I was just like, even the idea of the business being successful or not, it wasn't changing my happiness level. It was like, okay, I've got some more cash, don't have as much cash. Like the happiness needle was not moving. It wasn't correlated to cash. And I got exposed to some people along the way there where they were like 10 levels ahead of me, and they were like making some pretty, 7-figure incomes. And I was like chatting to them about it, and they were saying there's so little correlation for them between money and cash. They're like, or between money and happiness, because they were saying at a point it's a number on a screen. Like how can a number on a screen make you happier? Like, are you any happier now with 100,000 followers than you were with 50,000 followers?
Zero. Right, man. It just doesn't matter, right? Yeah. That's a great point, man. And I think, me and you have chatted before, and one thing you said that really stood out to me was, when I really look at that perfect day and that perfect life, it's not about having the biggest company or this or that, or being the number one cycler in the world. Like the thing you most love is taking a walk with your girlfriend and dog, grabbing a cup of coffee, like just those. And for me, it's the same thing. Like being able to sleep in a little bit this morning and cuddle with my wife and just have a great talk. And then getting to play with my kids and throw my kid in a laundry basket and swing him around for a while. It's like those little things, man, taking them to the park, all those things are what really make me grateful and glad to be alive, and having the freedom of time to do a lot of those things. And yeah, man, I think that wisdom kind of eludes a lot of people, that they just chase dollars, and they're kind of taught from an early age, well, the more you have, the happier you'll be. And I think that's a lie, man. And so it's cool that you discovered that. So you discovered that at a point in business. And then when do you make the decision to, hey, I want to get back to cycling, back to who I am? And tell me about what that was like.
Yeah, so I went away and I pressed pause on everything, sold all the companies, and like people from the outside, because the cycling coaching company especially, and the cafe to a lesser extent, would have had a pretty decent sized social following. And I would have been, on their Instagram stories and stuff most days. And then I just went dark. So I'd say people who weren't my friends were like, is he dead? Like, where's he gone? He just disappeared off the face of the earth. I was probably like 2 years where I was just like going, I'm not doing anything. I was in, I made a little bit of cash, and I could chill for a bit, but I'd be going to like weddings with my current girlfriend now, Sarah, who's, trying to make a bang for herself over on Twitter at the moment as well.
She's a great follow, man.
She thinks she's hilarious. She put a picture of her bike today saying, my perfect Valentine's date. So I'd be going to weddings and stuff with her, and events, and people would say to me like, oh, what do you do? And they want to put you into a box, and I'd just be like, oh, like nothing. And it would freak people out. She'd be like, why do you keep saying you do nothing? Why don't you tell them you're a lawyer? I'm not. Like, I don't do anything. She's like, tell them you like a cafe or business owner, entrepreneur, pro cyclist. I'm like, I'm not. I'm none of those things. I'm nothing. Like, I'm not that I am nothing, but I do nothing. Like, so it freaked people out a lot, but I was happy to just stand still and wait for the next thing. And then it was kind of lockdown hit, pandemic, and the next thing ended up being accidental. I was on this journey myself to kind of recover, as I say, health, happiness, longevity. And I was playing around with, the basic stuff. I try and not major in minor stuff, like, sitting in a sauna isn't going to lose you 150 pounds and bring back your happiness level. But if you're doing a lot of the other stuff right, a sauna is a nice addition. So I was trying to play around with, the basic stuff, calorie deficits, moving a lot, strengths, cardio. But then I was trying to add in the little things like okay, what effect if I take ketones first thing in the morning during a fast? What effect does those ketones have? Does it promote the cellular autophagy? Is it helping energy levels? What are those ketones doing? Same with cold, like different protocols. If I'm in the IRC versus if I'm in a cryo tub versus if I'm in, just an ice bath in my house. Same with sauna stuff. So I had 4 or 5 different areas because I figured if you look at how we get healthy, or how somebody achieves a goal in sport, it's never just like if your goal is to run a marathon, just running doesn't get you there. If your goal is to win a bike race, riding your bike doesn't get you there. So I arrived at this kind of system. Like a good analogy, actually, if you go to the dentist and you say like, hey, I want clean, straight, white teeth, going to the dentist doesn't get you there. You go away with a framework where he says, yeah, okay, so you've come to the dentist, that's one thing. Now you're going to brush twice a day, you're going to floss every other day, you're going to come back for a root canal, you're going to stop drinking coffee. So now you have your framework, or your steps, your shopping list that you have to do each day to get that outcome. So I had this epiphany that we don't do that in sports too often. So I was like, okay, so if I want this outcome to be healthy, happy, and live a long time, what's my framework for getting it? So my framework was 5 parts. It was nutrition, it was strength and conditioning, it was cardio through cycling, it was mindset work, and it was biohacks. So biohacks were that little add-on. So the podcast started out as a WhatsApp group of me just telling a few friends and buddies about the stuff I was doing. And then they started adding people into the WhatsApp group, and it got to an unsustainably big level. It got WhatsApp capped, I think, at like 200 people or something. They don't let you add anyone else in. So it became a podcast, and it still is true to that. It's me experimenting with biohacks, health hacks, how do we live longer, happier, and yeah, that's the genesis of it still.
It's amazing, man. And I want to read your pinned tweet, man, because this just fires me up and it inspired me so much. It said, I had no listeners for the first 10 episodes. I had no microphone for the first 100 episodes. I had no editor for the first 400 episodes. I had no sponsors for the first 500 episodes. Whatever you love, stick at it. It takes time. Apple Podcasts, top spot. And I just think, man, that's just, consistency is the cheat code. And when you find something that really makes you tick, and I kind of go back to those businesses where I'm sure you're a hardworking guy, right? And if you had stuck with those businesses, you'd probably be worth maybe more money right now, have whatever that would look like, right? But somewhere in there, you figured out that's not really me. That's not what really makes me tick and how I can win at all these areas of my life. And I think, taking that spot to chill where, maybe Sarah didn't like it, that you're just saying, I don't do anything right now. I'm just kind of figuring it out. It's probably a girl. I can't imagine my wife would want to introduce me like that either. Right. But like, I think that's okay to have a set period of time where you almost take inventory, take stock, and say, what really makes me tick? And I'm going to go in that direction. I was given that gift, man, 3.5 years ago that changed my life, where I came out here to Vegas 7.5 weeks before my family. Had 7.5 weeks with no TV, no internet. I slept on a mattress on the floor. We had no furniture, no anything, by myself, 7.5 weeks. Dude, I just did so much. I filled 3 notebooks about the vision I had for my life, where I wanted to go, my purpose, all these things that I was just too busy with, in my day-to-day stuff. And that really set the groundwork and the framework for the rest of my life. So, now you've found that, you're successful, you've got these sponsors. What does happiness kind of look like for you now, day to day? And what are some of the future goals kind of moving forward, man?
Yeah, I'm still working through that. I'd be interested to hear your sort of journey, your framework you went on for figuring out your vision. It's something that I'm constantly tweaking. I never want to have that, that idea of I think the Stoics call it the hedonic treadmill, common terminology. We call it, I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I have that house. I'll be happy when I have that car, because it's a dangerous way to live. Like my life now, I look back at my diaries from last year, and Sarah would be saying to me like, oh, maybe we just didn't dream big enough because we hit all the stuff. And I was like, or maybe we did, and we just exactly where we need to be right now. Like we need to enjoy the moment now and not always be like, okay, we'll chill when we hit this number. We'll chill when we hit this number. Yeah. Because, right now my parents, which I'm getting, very aware of, but my mom and dad are the wrong side of 70 at the moment. And I'm very aware that they're not going to be around forever. So now I'm like, okay, do I need to chase an extra 5K a month? Is that going to move the needle? Like after I can pay bills and cover my basic lifestyle, honestly, anything after that, it's like, yeah, it really doesn't matter too much.
numbers on a screen, man. After it's higher Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When you can cover that basic stuff, then you try and get to the next level of just enjoying yourself and being present. I love how you said that happy win, because I fell for that for a long time, man. I'll be happy when I get to this much money. That you're still the same person. You still have the same day. If you put $10 million in my bank account today, I think I'd just give away like 8.5 or 9 of it, man. Just like maybe keep a little extra for a safety valve. But like, I don't really feel like I need to change a lot. And one of the frameworks I use, Anthony, that might be powerful for you is every single month I do this thing called Perfect Day, and I audit my areas of my life that I want to win at. So for me, it's faith, fitness, family, finances, and friendships and relationships. And I just do a self audit and I ask myself, am I content in these areas? Do I need to get better at some of these areas? Do I need to fall back on some of these areas, right? Like right now I'm in a hiatus from poker because I felt like a lot of my best energy was going towards that. And winning an extra $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 a month doesn't affect my overall life at this point in my life at all. So I made a conscious decision to cut back from that. And then the other exercise I do is called Perfect Day, where I just outline, what does a perfect day look like for me? What am I doing?
What does a perfect day look like for you?
Oh, bro, I live it, man. I get to wake up at like 5:15 in the morning. I want to get up early. I want to journal. I want to put praise music on. I want to pray, give thanks to God for the gift of a new day, visualize just crushing a day. I go to the gym, I work out, get my movement in. Then I get to come back and I get to spend 2 hours plus with my family, man. This is the point every day where I have no phone, no anything. I take my boys to the park, run around, explore, let them be wild men. They're 2 2-year-olds. So we have a lot of fun. Then I get to come back and do things like this, man. I want to work 2 to 3 hours a day on only things I want to work on, get to talk to awesome people like you, be inspired, create content on YouTube, write threads, interact with clients that I'm coaching, have a group coaching community that I can pour into, work on those things that I'm really passionate about, and then spend more time with family, man. And then ultimately have a babysitter come, which we do 3 times a week, and I take my wife on dates. That's pretty much my perfect life, man.
Do you find it hard to compartmentalize? This is the part I'm struggling with at the moment, because in our game where it's it's podcasting, it's Twitter, it's YouTube, the work's never done. You can that to-do list is just, I've never got to the end of my to-do list. It's like the end of my laundry basket. There's stuff in there from 1990. I haven't got there.
And one of my first mentors, Phil, he ran a big company back 500 employees or whatever, and he was over the head of it. And he used to say this thing that like you just have to have defined times of work. And he would do this in his personal life where he'd say, I'm going to go do yard work, but I'm actually going to set a timer for 45 minutes. I'm going to do the best yard work I can in that 45 minutes. But and I'm going to focus on that. But when it's done, I detach from the yard work. It'll still be there tomorrow or the next time I get to it. And I've kind of taken that framework with Twitter. It's hard. I definitely think it's hard, man. But I have cutoff times every night that I just won't do it, man. And at that point, that means for me, I can't respond to everybody, man. I have 300 DMs right now that I haven't gotten to. It is what it is, right? Like I just can't. I don't have the bandwidth to still be the kind of family man I want. Be present, be healthy. It would be 24 hours a day on just Twitter. If I wanted to hit every notification now, that's what it would be. And so you just have to make a decision. I have these defined times for it. I'll do the best I can when I'm there. And then I'm going to try and move on to the next thing and be super present for that.
So like you can physically detach, but do you ever find yourself, do you mentally carry baggage? Like an example, recently, the first time I've ever felt this on Twitter, I put up you're always tweaking on Twitter to see how you can improve engagement and stuff. So there's a big debate between drivers and cyclists all over the world. Drivers don't like cyclists, cyclists don't like drivers. So I put up one side of it saying, 3 things cyclists need to stop doing in the drivers versus cyclist debate. And it was like semi-critical of cyclists. But the context is, I'm someone who's ridden my bike for my entire life, have a cycling podcast, yada, yada. I'm a passionate advocate for cyclists and cycling rights. But these were just 3 or 4 things that I thought, this isn't that helpful. Like if you bang on the side of someone's car at a stop sign because they gave you a close pass, that escalation is never really, like I've been there. And unless you're willing to get into a full fist fight, it's probably not a good idea. Like it's just not worth it. Did the close pass annoy me that much? But it blew up. And it blew up to the point that I ended up deleting the actual original tweet because I was getting so many DMs of like hate and abuse on it. And I didn't think it would bother me because I had thought like, okay, do I really care if a dude who lives with his mom in his basement, has ridden his bike like 4 times in his life, doesn't agree with my opinion? Like on a rational sense, that shouldn't affect you. But I definitely carried that mood through to after I put my phone down on interactions with my parents, my sister, my girlfriends. Have you had that experience?
100%, man. Yeah, I think that's something you go through. And I would just challenge you to look at that as an opportunity, because I remember the first time, man, I took a walk one night and I came back and I just saw my wife sleeping and she was so beautiful. And I just, off the cuff, I just wrote a little thread about how in love I was with my wife. And I felt lucky to get to journey through life with her, man. She's an amazing person. And I tweeted it. And dude, I woke up the next day to 200 quote tweets calling me a beta, a soy, a simp, pussy, name it in the word, man. And I had like 8,000 followers at the time. And this was the first interaction I had with, I felt like I couldn't breathe, man. I was being like, I tried to go to the gym that morning and I couldn't even lift weights. I felt like, holy cow, man, I'm like being attacked. And then I remember calling Zach Hommel, my coach, and talking through it. And he's like, dude, these people are outraged about everything. They'll be outraged about the next thing in 15 minutes. It's not personal. Like, you just have to learn to detach from that, in the same way that, like, with poker, I detach from the outcome of the hand, right? I play the best I can. I detach from the outcome. If he hits the miracle card on the river and I lose the pot, I did the best I could, right? And so I would frame that in a way for you, and this is how I've done it moving forward, is I say, number one, there's something very missing in a person who would just come attack you online for that. Now, if they disagree, that's awesome. And they say, hey, Anthony, I appreciate point number 1 and 2. I kind of differ on number 3, and here's why. What do you think? That's a lot different than, you're an idiot, you're a piece of, like, anybody who's going to come in that second way, they're so mentally unhealthy that I just feel sorry for them, man. Like, and again, it has nothing to do with you. That same person is now yelling at somebody for a different tweet right now. And so once you realize that it has nothing to do with you and your life is still great and you're creating the exact life you want, man, I just frame it in a way that I feel so sorry for that person now. And when I still, I have tweets go viral a decent amount, right? And so anytime they do, it kind of gets outside of our echo chamber, the health, fitness mindset, all the people that are like wanting to win, and you get into this toxic environment of people that want to put people down. Man, I just tell them, like, I hope you have the most blessed day. They can say something really hateful and mean to me. Oh, you're a soy simp, whatever. And I just say, man, I hope you find a woman that changes your mind someday. Because, I really do like it, but that's not going to affect the way I carry on the rest of my day. And, I think a lot of the people I've coached on social media now have gone through this too. That first time it goes viral, you do feel like you're being attacked. But dude, those people are on to the next problem the next day, right? It really has nothing to do with you. They're waking up and seeking these things that they can put toxicity out. And once you realize that, you do just feel sorry for them. And then you just get to smile and be like, well, I'll say a kind word back, or I'll mute them, and they can keep shouting into the abyss if they want while they're muted, because you'll never see it. And you just get to go on having a great life and a great day, which is, you win. Yeah,
it's interesting. I went down the rabbit hole of trying to understand why somebody would do it a little bit. And I was reading some works from some psychologists, and one of the most prominent theories of why anonymous accounts on Twitter will say something like, nobody would call on your door and call you a soy simp.
Yeah, there's no way, man. Right.
And the reason a lot of psychologists say is that interactions in one-on-one, especially male-to-male interactions one-on-one, are underpinned by a threat of violence. Even if it's a couple of layers down or it's very far removed, ancestrally, it's underpinned by a threat of violence. Like, if you say something, you say something racially inappropriate, which you see on Twitter all the time, like, you would never walk up to somebody and have that same comment, because they might have a reaction. You don't know that person, and they might have a reaction. They might have a short fuse. So you moderate your behavior, but you don't have those moderation mechanisms online, especially with the anonymous profiles online.
I would love a change on Twitter where you could only interact with people who are actually verified and putting their profile out there. And then you could have a second option where you could say, yeah, I'll interact with anonymous people. Because I do feel like, man, if you do want to say racist comments, which I've had plenty of them charged at my family, I think you should have to say who you are, right? Like, and you shouldn't just be able to hide behind some picture of Braveheart, or whatever your profile picture is, right? Like, I think if you want to say those things, then you should be allowed to say them. You should have the freedom to say it, but you should also everybody else should have the freedom to know who you are and that you think this way, right? So I think it'd be a better place if everybody sort of had to get verified, or if they didn't want to, they kind of had their own separate chat,
What's the argument for maintaining the anonymity?
Probably jobs. I do know a lot of guys who have large followings, and they just basically say, like, if my company knew I was tweeting these things, I'd get fired. So I respect that. I respect there's a guy named Save Your Sons who I love to death, Harrison, and I've Zoomed with him. He's a great looking dude. And I asked him, why don't you put your profile up? And he said, I've been semi-famous. I've played in a band. The message isn't about me. I want it to be just about the message, right? So I don't want people thinking of me. So I respect that a lot. I respect why people do it. I just think that it'd be nice to have an option, because all the hate always comes from anonymous people, man. I'm very rarely getting hate from, Ted from California, who's works at, you know about Ted from looking at his profile, right? It is an anonymous account 99% of the time.
But you're so right. I heard, I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast where he was saying a guest had achieved a level of notoriety where Rogan said to him, hey, I feel like I'm going to have to give you the talk. Don't read the comments anymore. And his rationale was, he's like, LeBron isn't in your comments. LeBron's not in your DMs giving you abuse. He's got his own stuff going on. Like the builders, the creators, the visionaries, they're busy. They're doing their own shit. They're not coming to rip you down.
Yeah, that's right, man. I mean, I think about like anybody who really did anything in the world. Henry Ford, the guy who invented the car, was told no, like 78, like he was an idiot, right? Like just build a faster horse. That's what they told him, right? Like, but he had this vision to do different things. And when you have a vision to do different things, I really think what it comes down to be honest, is people see that and they're stuck in their framework and they don't want to get out. And so they project a lot of their negativity on you. Well, it's not fair that Anthony can just get paid to do a podcast. That's not fair, man. I busted my butt and went to law school and he makes more than I do. Well, there's a part of them that has this jealousy aspect. Instead of saying, what could I learn from Anthony? He chased his dream. He put a lot on the line to go for that. Inspires me. I think some people look at it like that. And obviously you want everybody to look at it like that. But I think other people just have this side of the coin that it's not fair. They've always played life by the rules. And the rules have got them maybe into a spot in a corporate job that they hate. They feel stuck. They feel trapped. They feel miserable. They feel like there's no way out. And so, man, to be able to put on this anonymous face and go spew hate at people that they're probably very envious of, I think, on a lot of levels, I think that's what a lot of it comes down to.
The rules are interesting. I'm not hugely political, but you can't avoid US politics if you're on Twitter too much. Like our political system in Ireland, we don't really have that. You've like two sides. You've Democrat, Republican. We basically just have everyone in the middle. So it was super interesting. I think you had a recent tweet where you were talking about Nancy Pelosi's annual salary versus her net worth, and then a Republican counterpart, was it Mitch McConnell? His annual salary versus net worth. And it's like, obviously these guys are making cash donations from somewhere. Like Nancy Pelosi, I was reading, is a more successful investor than Warren Buffett.
Yes. Did you see that statistic? Over a 15-year period, her and Paul Pelosi they beat every hedge fund. They beat the best of the best in the industry. Well, how do you think that is, right? And all her counterparts are the same. Like there's a reason these people, like, I'll get kicked off of YouTube if I really get into this, but like, they found out about COVID. They're on record. There's still senators in the US that the first thing they did was buy stock in pharmaceutical and sell stock in companies they knew were going to go down. They use that position of power. And I think that's very wrong, man. And so I try and highlight that, but there were so many people angry about that, saying, I don't know. People get angry about everything. I think when you get to a certain level on social media or your podcast or whatever, you're always going to say something that somebody's going to disagree with. And so I often thank the 110,000 people that now follow me, because I understand they're not going to agree with me on everything I say. That's illogical, but they still find value in what I put out to follow along. And so I say thank you a lot for that, with the understanding that if me and you sat down and just talked about every issue in life, we'd probably disagree on some of them, right? But I can still learn, be inspired, and grow as a human because of our interactions. And I choose to see life through that way, man. And I think it's just a way better way to choose to see life.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely have hard lines where I'm like, if we disagree on this, we're not friends. Like, we can disagree on most things, but if we disagree about racism, like, we're not friends.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely a couple hard, like, dude, if you're a Nazi, I don't care if you're a nice person and a Nazi, I'm not going to be friends with you, right? Like, on the other side, I don't care if you're, if you're one of these woke people who says you can't ever say anything, without offending every single human, like, I probably can't be friends with you, like, of course, I love the fact that you guys, I didn't really know this in Ireland, but you're more in the middle. And that's what I hope, man. I would hope more people in the US start to get away from these polarization sides of the media and just understand 95% of us want the same things in life. We just want to be happy with around people we love. We don't really care what a lot of these politicians are doing or how they're dividing everybody. We just, most people just want to live a good life and love the people around them,
But the super weird thing, and I think you can always observe strange peculiarities when you're on the outside looking in at a system, where you guys have two camps and you're like, hey, you're either red or you're blue. But it's like, if all the stuff that one side stands for, if they're all your opinions, like, I don't really feel like they're your opinions. Like, if I looked at would I be red or blue, it's like, well, I've got some stuff like, yeah, I'm pro-choice, but I'm also was very anti-lockdown, anti-mandates around vaccines. I also think you should be able to carry a gun if you want. I also very free speech. They're totally opposites on blue and red. It's like, well, what party's that?
That's the weird thing, man, is I feel like no party really represents the people. And I'm not even sure how you could say, like, because, yeah, if you're pro-choice, but then you're not pro, like, people choosing whether they want a vaccine or not, I don't know how you play that out in your head,
That's the bizarrest one of all time for me. Like, you're pro-choice, but you're not pro-choice on what I got to put into my body. It's like, what?
Yeah.
How do you... It was such a bizarre controversy and such a bizarre debate that raged. And I think we had kind of a proxy debate that was very similar to yours. And I didn't get a vaccine. And I didn't care that much. It was funny because Peter McCulloch, who was the guest Joe Rogan almost got cancelled for off Spotify. He was on Joe Rogan and he was basically the biggest guest in the world at the time. And then his PR agency reached out like a week later and said, hey, Peter would love to come on your podcast. Would you be up for it? And I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. Like, literally the biggest guest in the world. And I was stoked, started researching. And I remember one day, Sarah, my girlfriend, left me a note and she's like, she went out and she just said, is this your hill to die on? And I was like, thinking about it, I was like, it's not. I just don't care enough. I think people are good, and maybe it's a naive assumption, but I think people are good, and people that strongly advocated for a vaccine or strongly advocate against vaccine, I think most people done it out of a place of compassion. Sure, the pharma companies had different motives, but general Joe and Jane public, I think it was from a place of compassion. It was from a place of fear. It was from a place of wanting the best for their loved ones. And I was like, I just don't care enough about this debate to start, ruining my podcasts, taking really polarizing sides on an opinion that's on a topic that's really, people feel so strongly about.
Man, I agree with you 100%. I think that everybody on both not everybody, but 90% of people, again, fall in that middle ground where they think what they're doing is the right thing on both sides. And that's why it's hard being a human, right? Because we come from different backgrounds, different things. And, we need to find ways to communicate better. So did you actually turn him down then on the podcast? Did you say, no, thanks?
Yeah, it was a tough one.
I mean, dude, he got like 25 million views on Joe Rogan the week before that.
Yeah, it was a tough one to say no to, but I'm still glad I did, and I still look back on the whole debate, and I'm happy I stood on the sidelines. Like, my background, I couldn't just turn a blind eye that I spent 7 years in academia. The whole idea of academia is we reach a conclusion and then we try and disprove our cherished conclusion. Like, I know your wife's a PhD. It's exact same thing. You're trying to disprove cherished conclusions, and then I seen robust debate being stifled. Like, where is the robust debate? Where is the challenge? Where is the peer-reviewed data? And I was like, you know what? There's a few warning bells going off here. I'm in a very low risk category. I'm just going to chill. I'm going to sit on the sidelines and see how this one plays out. I was rooting for it to work. Like, didn't want it to be work.
Right. Yeah, I'm definitely. I mean, I pray that you see some of the side effects and stuff. I pray every day that what the worst people on the right say is going to happen doesn't happen, because that's terrible. I mean, that's where people are weird, man. Like, I don't necessarily think I didn't like Donald Trump, to be perfectly honest. I think there's a lot of stuff wrong with him, but I still hoped that he did a good job. I don't really like Joe Biden, to be honest. I don't think he knows what planet he's on some days, but I hope he does a great job, right? Like, it's weird how people, like, Trump would say something dumb or Biden says something dumb and people can't wait to just like pounce on him and make him feel bad. Like, I don't understand living that way, right? Like, we're all here doing this thing together on Earth. There's 8 billion of us now, right? Like, it just costs nothing to be kind and build others up. And I think you're using your platform to do that. I always try and want to use mine to do that too. Just promote health and happiness and what's best for you, and kind of living. I don't know, man, that those other people that are going to come attack you, I think you'll learn to just feel a little empathy for them, man. And you'll be able to compartmentalize it and just say, I'm still going to have a great day. Whether 100 people told me I had people tell me they hoped I died, man, that me and my family died from COVID just because I was out doing pull-ups when they closed my gym, and then they tried to close down my outdoor fitness court, and I'd rip the tape down and go do the pull-ups because I'm like, dude, I'm out here by myself doing pull-ups. I'm not going to not do that. That's silly, you know? And I literally had people tell me they hope that me and my family died from COVID. And it's like, man, you have to be in a dark place to think something like that, you know?
Well, like we had a 2K restriction, and like very early, I had said on a podcast, like I'm not doing this 2K restriction. Like it's nonsense. Like 2K, I live in a densely populated area, so it's like everyone's off work. There's a 2K restriction.
What does that mean? A 2K restriction? What's that?
Like, so 2 kilometer radius from your house, you weren't allowed outside of that. So you draw, yeah. So you were allowed outside, but you had to stay within that 2K. And there was police checkpoints saying, "Hey, can you show me proof of your address? Are you more than 2 kilometers from home?" Mm-hmm. Very early, I just said, like, it was full Nazi state. I just said, like, I'm not participating in this. Like, it's, you know, you guys want to do it. But my rationale was at that point, we still weren't sure about transmission. Was it airborne? Was it not? Proximity. I was like, if the idea is it's airborne disease and you're trying to keep people separated, I'm like, I live in a densely populated area and so 2 kilometers from me, there's one park and there's one beach. Everybody's off work. Everybody's going to the park, right, crammed into it. And you're telling me I can't go to the mountains by myself and ride my bike or go hiking. I was like, you know, this ain't happening. So I just cycled, and I just, police checkpoints were there. I just, you know, passed them with a bit of speed. I'm like, what are they going to chase me? They're going to go on a high speed chasing a cyclist.
Yeah, that would have been quite the news, man, to see you just flying by at 35 miles an hour on your bike and they're chasing you on that, man. But yeah,
people got so mad. I got the same. Like, you know, people, oh, I hope you crash and die out training. It's like, what? Why? Why would you hope that?
Yeah, it's so weird, man. Yeah, we saw they closed down some national parks around here, and it was the same thing. They were telling people you can't go hiking outdoors by yourself. Like, it just made these national parks are huge. That's what we should want everybody to go do. Get outside and vitamin D and exercise and move your body. Like, that was the best thing. But it became a really weird time, man. I don't know. I'm grateful that we're sort of past that period, it seems like, and everything's a little bit back to normal. I hope people learned lessons from it, and I don't know. My hope is, I'm positive. I just hope that humanity can come together a lot more after these events, you know?
And I think what you do with your accounts, you had a tweet up recently where you said, you know, positivity is a choice. And it's so powerful. Like, you're having the butterfly effect far beyond what you realize. You know, you get to interact with those, you know, 100 people that you actually have time to reply with on DM or your engagement groups. You get to know some people. But there's dudes out there reading your tweets. I know I was one of them for a long time, and I'd like have a bad day and I flick onto one of your YouTube videos and I never knew you or met you, but it makes a difference in someone's day. And I think that's super powerful.
I appreciate that, brother. And I think that's what drew me to you right away too, is just seeing that that's your mission, right? It's pretty obvious that when you're getting to know you more, and even this podcast is so cool, like, again, if you only cared about money, your path was there. Just keep building businesses, right? And do that and be at these fancy restaurants, these fancy people, you know, but I think you found what makes you tick. And I think there's nothing more inspiring in the world than seeing somebody who found something they love and they're passionate about, and they just keep going. They just keep going and they just keep going. And I think I admire you in so many ways, man, because I'm sure everybody's going to call you lucky in a few years when you're making 50K a year in your number one podcast, right? Oh, you're just lucky to be able to do that. Or even now, I'm sure you'll get a lot of that, but nobody probably saw the self-doubt and the lonely days and the, man, is this ever going to work? Am I ever going to get a sponsor? Am I, all those things, man, you have to battle through kind of when you're chasing that dream or that life that you want. And some people just won't be denied. And I'm proud of you, man, because you weren't denied, man. And you're creating the exact life you want. It seems like with you and Sarah, super happy, building a great foundation and relationship. And man, I wish you guys nothing but the best, man. I think you're a world changer, brother. I think you're affecting so many people out there too. And I'm grateful to know you and get to watch the journey too, man.
Tyler, thanks very much for having me on the podcast. It's been a blast. I'll have to get you over to Dublin to visit. We might even get you onto a bike.
Dude, I've been to Dublin twice. So I went over to Ireland for like 12 days back this like decade ago. And it was my favorite memory in the world, man. I was in a pub at 3 a.m. kicking my feet up, singing Irish folk songs. A lot of Jameson going on over there, man. But I love that place. Everybody I met is like super friendly, super kind. I'd love to come visit, man. So I'll take you up on that.
For you and your girlfriend. So
well, dude, give the viewers one last word, man, before we take off, Anthony.
Look, it's been a super non-linear journey for me. It's been many false starts and many times of like self-doubt. And I don't even want to project and say I'm successful now, but I'm definitely on a journey towards that vision I created for myself. When you step back and you look at yourself and say, okay, I'm writing a story. It's a story about myself. What direction am I going to take this story? What story arc does the hero travel on? If the hero now is a piece of shit and he's sitting down drinking beers and he's chain smoking cigarettes and he's cheating on his wife 4 times a week, it's like, okay, that's where the hero is now, but what journey does he go on? And that's where I started out saying, okay, I'm the hero in this story. I'm not in a good spot now, but how do I journey towards this incredible story? And I'm still trying to do that and sprinkle cool adventures in. Like this year of some amazing bike races planned in Kenya, Iceland, US, all over the world. And it's just, each one of those would be a cool little story. So yeah, I definitely would try and say to everyone, use this podcast as that little proverbial tap on the shoulder to start chasing after your dream.
Man, that's powerful. That's a perfect way to end. Well, I'm going to link everything Anthony does below, guys. He's at Roadman Cycling on Twitter. Great follow, puts out fantastic comment. We'll obviously link everything he does and his Spotify podcast as well down below. You guys got to check that out. I was a guest on that pretty recently. Pretty pumped to be on that one too. And yeah, man, I appreciate you so much for coming on, brother, and taking the time. You guys go have the greatest day of your life. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and let's go change the world, baby. Have the greatest day, and thanks for tuning in.